Garbage collector finds strange item in old man's trash. What he discovers forces him to call 911. Derek bent down to grab the trash bin in front of the last house on the street. It was early, the sky still painted in soft morning colors, and everything felt quiet. This house looked different from the rest. Paint peeling, weeds growing high, porch lights still flickering even after the sun had risen. He had passed it all week and never seen anyone come out. People said the man inside kept to himself. Some said he lost his wife. Some just didn't say anything at all. But today felt different. As Derek lifted the lid of the old plastic bin, a sharp smell hit him. Not just old garbage, something metallic, something sour. He pulled back slightly, trying not to breathe through his nose. But then something caught his eye. Right on top of the pile, there was a torn photograph. It looked like it had been ripped in half. One side showed a smiling woman, her eyes kind, the edges frayed like someone had stared at it too long before letting it go. Next to it, a thick cloth was bunched up, stained dark, not red exactly, but brownish like it had dried. Derek leaned in. Was it blood? His stomach tightened. Then came the sound that made his heart jump. A creaking noise behind him. Derek turned around fast. The front door was open just a crack. And standing there, barely more than a shadow in the frame, was the old man himself. Pale, thin, wrapped in a bathrobe that hung off his body like it belonged to someone bigger. His hair was wild, his eyes hollow. But what stood out the most wasn't his appearance. It was the way he looked at Derek, like he was scared, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in days or weeks. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Derek still holding the trash lid, the man gripping the door frame like he needed it to stay upright. "Morning, sir," Derek said quietly, not sure what else to say. No reply. The man's lips moved, like he was about to say something, but no words came. Instead, he looked down, at Derek's hands, at the trash, at the photograph. Then his eyes quickly darted away, like he had seen too much. The door closed slowly, gently, not slammed, but heavy. Final. Derek stood there, frozen, the bin still open in front of him. He had picked up trash every day for a week, and nothing had ever made him stop like this. But today something was off, deeply off. That photo, the cloth, the look in that man's eyes. It wasn't just sadness. It was something else. Pain that had nowhere to go. Maybe fear. Derek looked down into the bin again. Now he noticed other things. Broken glass, pieces of a clock, a half-empty bottle of pills. Everything looked rushed, like someone had been trying to throw out their whole life in one night. He took a deep breath and closed the bin, then wheeled it to the truck, lifting it slowly. The garbage clattered into the compactor like usual. But this time, it didn't feel routine. It felt like something had been buried, something important. As he walked back toward the truck, he looked once more at the old man's house. The curtains were drawn again. No sign of movement, no noise. Just that same porch light, still flickering faintly even as the sun got brighter. Something inside Derek told him not to let this go. This wasn't just an old man cleaning out junk. Something had changed, and deep down, Derek knew. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The next morning, Derek woke up thinking about that house. The broken photograph, the stained cloth, the old man's face. It all kept replaying in his head. It wasn't just about trash anymore. Something deeper was going on. But what? As he walked toward the truck, his coworker, Mike, was already sipping his usual coffee. "You ready, kid?" Mike asked. Derek nodded, but his thoughts were somewhere else. As they rolled through the neighborhood, picking up bins and tossing in bags like usual, Derek found his eyes drifting down the street. He wasn't looking at the clean lawns or friendly mailboxes anymore. He was watching one house. The house. with the faded shutters and the closed curtains. When they reached it again, Derek paused. He walked slowly toward the bin, not knowing what to expect this time. But today it was almost empty. Only one bag inside. No strange cloth. No broken glass. No photos. He let out a quiet breath. Maybe yesterday had just been one bad day. Still, the silence of the house felt louder than ever. He looked up at the windows, hoping for a glimpse of the old man, a wave, a nod, something. But there was nothing. "Hey, Mike," Derek said. "What do you know about the guy who lives here?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "Old man Henderson? Not much. Used to be sharp, talked to everyone. His wife passed last year, and after that, he kinda disappeared. No family?" "None that I know of," Mike said. "I don't think anyone checks in on him. Not really." That didn't sit right with Derek. The truck moved on, but his thoughts stayed behind. That evening, instead of heading home after work, Derek stopped by a local flower shop and picked up a small potted marigold, bright yellow petals, full of life. He didn't know why. Maybe it was something his mom used to do when people were hurting. Maybe it just felt like the right thing, that... Next morning, before his shift, he walked quietly to Mr. Henderson's porch and placed the flower near the door. He didn't knock, just stood there for a second. "I thought you could use a little sunshine," he said softly, and then he walked away. Day by day, Derek kept checking. The flower disappeared after 2 days. He didn't know if it had been thrown out or taken inside, but either way, it meant someone had opened the door. That was something. As the week went on, Derek kept being himself, friendly, kind, never too pushy. He greeted the same neighbors who still barely looked at him. One, Lady Mrs. Thompson, always avoided eye contact. Until one morning, he noticed her dragging a heavy cardboard box full of old books to the curb, struggling under its weight. "Ma'am, let me help you with that," Derek said, jogging over. She hesitated at first, wary, her eyes scanning him, like she wasn't used to people offering help for no reason, but then she nodded. "Thank you," she said, so softly he almost didn't hear it. After that day, she started greeting him with a small wave. Nothing big, just enough to feel human. Little moments like that started happening more often. A wave from a kid on a bike. A thank you from a man raking leaves. A glass of lemonade from a young girl named Lily who said, "You're always smiling. My mom says you're the nicest garbage guy we've ever had." Derek laughed at that. "That's a good thing, right?" She nodded. "Yeah. Most people don't even look at us, but you always say hi." Derek's heart warmed at her words. It reminded him why he did what he did. It wasn't just about collecting trash. It was about showing people that every job and every person deserved respect, but still, Mr. Henderson's house stayed quiet. Derek noticed the curtains would shift sometimes when he approached, like someone was peeking through them. He always smiled in that direction, waved, said, "Good morning, sir," even when no one replied. He didn't expect anything back. He just wanted the man inside to know someone still saw him. One day, as he lifted the bin near Mr. Henderson's house, Derek caught a glimpse of something strange again. Not trash this time, but the man himself. He was outside, standing on the porch, looking lost. Derek didn't say a word. He didn't want to scare him off. He just gave a soft smile and nodded. The old man didn't smile back, but he didn't go inside either. For the first time, he just stood there, watching, maybe thinking. That night, Derek lay in bed thinking about all of it. The house, the silence, the loneliness. He didn't know the whole story yet, but he could feel it. Something was building, and he had a feeling something big was coming soon. Derek didn't know why, but that quiet moment with Mr. Henderson standing on the porch stuck with him. It was the first time the man had come outside since Derek had started the job. No words, no wave, just standing there like he wasn't sure whether to stay or go, like something inside him was fighting to come out, or to stay hidden. The next few mornings, Derek looked for signs, small clues that maybe the old man was opening up. But the house returned to its usual silence, curtains drawn, door closed, no Marigold, no sound, no Henderson, until Thursday. It was still early. Dew clung to the grass and the sun hadn't fully risen yet. Derek turned onto Maple Street, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, ready to start another routine morning. But something wasn't routine. Mr. Henderson's trash bin, normally light and nearly empty, was overflowing. That might not sound like much. But for Derek, it was a red flag. He stepped out of the truck and walked slowly toward the bin. The lid wasn't even shut. Garbage was spilling over. Paper, broken glass, pill bottles, what looked like pieces of wood or maybe part of a chair. Derek leaned in. The books were old, some leather-bound, their pages yellowed. One had a handwritten note on the inside cover. To Margaret, forever and always. Derek paused, heart tight in his chest. Then he noticed the pill bottles. Labels torn. 3 of them, all empty. He picked one up carefully with gloved hands. It rattled slightly, maybe 1 or 2 pills still inside. His breath caught when he saw a shattered picture frame, glass shards glinting under the morning light, with a torn photo inside. Only part of the woman's face remained. It was Margaret again. It was like the man had tried to erase her from his life all at once. Why now? Derek looked up at the house, still silent. Curtains pulled tight like a secret being kept, but something. In Derek's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. Really wrong. All day, he couldn't shake the feeling. Later that week, the signs got stranger. As Derek passed by Mr. Henderson's house one morning, he heard something. Muffled words like someone talking to themselves. He paused and looked toward the porch. Mr. Henderson was there, alone, pacing back and forth, muttering. No, they can't know. They'll come. They always come when it's too late. Derek didn't know whether to interrupt. He didn't want to embarrass or scare him. But something in the old man's voice. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was fear, panic, like he was fighting something only he could see. Derek called out, soft and calm. "Everything okay, sir?" Mr. Henderson snapped his head up, startled. Their eyes met, briefly. Then he turned and vanished inside, door closing fast behind him. The next day, Derek saw him again, this time in the backyard. He was digging small holes, mumbling to himself. Derek couldn't hear what he was saying, but his movements were quick and shaky, like he was hiding something. Every few minutes he'd stop, pull something out of his pocket, drop it into the dirt, and cover it. Back up. Derek's stomach sank. He didn't know what the old man was burying. Memories, guilt, medication, something else. But it wasn't normal. That night, Derek called Mike. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual. "You remember Mr. Henderson? The guy at the end of Maple?" Mike yawned into the phone. "Yeah, sure. Why?" "Have you noticed anything strange? Like, really strange?" Mike was quiet for a second. "I mean, he's always been a little odd since his wife passed. But strange how?" Derek hesitated. "I think he's in trouble. I don't know if it's just grief or something worse. He's talking to himself, throwing away everything, digging holes in the yard. And the trash? It's full of stuff that feels personal, like he's giving up." Mike sighed. "Derek, I've been on this route 10 years. You learn not to get too involved. Some people just want to be left alone." "I know," Derek said. "But what if he doesn't? What if no one's ever asked him?" There was a pause. Then Mike said, "You got a good heart, kid. But be careful. Some wounds don't heal just because someone knocks on the door." Derek hung up, staring at his ceiling in the dark. He knew Mike was probably right, but something deep inside told him to keep going, because it didn't feel like Mr. Henderson was just grieving anymore. It felt like he was slowly disappearing in front of everyone's eyes, and nobody, not one neighbor, not one friend, not one family member, was doing anything about it. So Derek made a quiet promise to himself. Tomorrow, he was going to do something different, something that couldn't be ignored. The next morning, Derek didn't go straight to the truck. Instead, he sat at his small kitchen table with a pen and a sheet of paper. The sun was just rising outside, but his thoughts were already miles down Maple Street. He wasn't sure what to write at first. He wasn't a counselor. He wasn't family. He was just the garbage guy. But after everything he'd seen, the torn photo, the strange digging, the talking to someone who wasn't there, he knew Mr. Henderson needed someone to reach out. So he wrote the only way he knew how. Simply, honestly. Dear Mr. Henderson, I'm Derek. I pick up your trash every morning. I've noticed you might be going through a hard time. I don't mean to bother you, but I wanted you to know you're not alone. If you ever need help with anything, carrying groceries, fixing something, or even just to talk, I'm here. You can leave me a note in your mailbox or just wave when you see me. I know it's not much, but I care. Sincerely, Derek. He folded the paper carefully and slid it into a plain envelope. Later that morning, during his route, he walked quietly to Mr. Henderson's mailbox. The porch was still, the house unchanged. He slipped the envelope inside and walked away without looking back. He didn't expect a miracle. He just wanted to try. The next day, as usual, the house was quiet. No sign of the old man. But something was different. As Derek approached the trash bin, he saw something peeking out from the top, a crumpled piece of paper. It was his letter, thrown away. For a moment, Derek just stood there, holding it in his gloved hand. He didn't know what to feel. Disappointment? Embarrassment? Maybe he'd crossed a line. Maybe Mr. Henderson didn't want help. He started to toss it back into the bin, but something stopped him. There, near the bottom corner of the page, was a smudge. Light, faint, but unmistakable. It looked like a teardrop. Derek stared at it. The letter hadn't just been thrown away. It had been read. He refolded the page gently and slipped it into his jacket pocket. This wasn't rejection. This was someone who didn't know how to say yes. The next few days, Derek tried to keep his routine. He smiled at the kids riding bikes, helped Mrs. Thompson with her bins, chatted with Mike during breaks. But every time he passed Mr. Henderson's house, he slowed just a little, looked a little longer, waved, even if no one waved back. Then came Saturday. Derek arrived earlier than usual, the morning cold and still. As he turned onto Maple, his heart skipped. There, sitting on the porch steps in his old bathrobe, was Mr. Henderson. He looked smaller somehow, like the wind might carry him away. His hands were folded in his lap, and his eyes were staring at nothing in particular. Derek parked the truck quietly and walked toward the house, careful not to rush. "Morning, sir," he said softly, voice gentle. The old man looked up slowly, as if pulled back from some faraway place. His eyes met Derek's, and for the first time, didn't dart away. He didn't smile. But he didn't frown either. Just looked. Really looked. Derek stood at the edge of the porch, hands at his sides. "It's a nice morning," he said, just to say something. "Bit chilly, though." No reply. Just that gaze. Then, almost imperceptibly, Mr. Henderson gave a tiny nod. Derek's heart swelled. It was small. Barely a gesture at all. But to him, it felt like a door cracking open. He didn't push further. Didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll let you be then." but I'll be around if you need anything." And with that, he turned and headed back toward the truck. From the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Mr. Henderson's head turn, following him, just slightly. That afternoon, Derek sat on his porch after work, watching the sky turn gold. The old man's face was still in his mind, the way he looked at him, not with anger or even sadness, but something quieter. It reminded Derek of something his mother once told him. Sometimes people aren't silent because they have nothing to say. Sometimes they're silent because no one's ever listened long enough. That night, Derek went to bed thinking not just about Mr. Henderson, but about every person who had been forgotten, overlooked, or left behind just because they couldn't say, "I need help." Mr. Henderson hadn't said it yet. But maybe, just maybe, he was starting to feel that someone out there finally cared enough to hear it. By now, Derek had developed a rhythm with Maple Street, same faces, same smiles, or sometimes lack of them, same bins waiting neatly at the edge of the curb. But one house always made his steps slow, made his heart feel heavier than it should, for someone just doing his job. Mr. Henderson's. It had been a week since the old man sat silently on his porch, and since then, Derek had hoped for more small breakthroughs. A wave. A word. Anything. But the house had gone quiet again. Too quiet. Then came Tuesday. The air was sharp with early frost. Leaves covered the ground like a blanket that no one bothered to sweep. As Derek turned onto Maple Street, something caught his attention right away. Mr. Henderson's porch light, which always flickered through the night, was off, for the first time. That probably wouldn't mean much to most people, but Derek noticed, because it had always been on, even in the morning. It had become like a lighthouse in a storm, a sign that someone, somewhere inside, was still there. Now, it was dark. The curtains, usually parted just enough to show the movement of a figure inside, were pulled shut like a wall. Something felt off. Deeply off. Derek parked the truck and stepped out slowly. He walked toward the house, scanning the windows, the porch, the bins. Every detail screaming that something wasn't right. And then he saw the trash bin, overflowing again. The lid sat crooked, forced up by the sheer amount of stuff inside. Derek approached cautiously, heart already pounding. He lifted the lid, his breath caught. There were more torn photographs. All old. Most had been carefully framed at some point, now shattered and tossed carelessly in. Pieces of ceramic, probably. What used to be decorative vases, mixed with broken glass and crumpled paper. More pill bottles, their labels scratched out completely. But it was the cloth that stopped him cold. It looked like an old shirt, stained a rusty brown. Derek couldn't lie to himself anymore. That was blood. The air felt heavier around him. Still. Like the world was holding its breath. Slowly, he looked up at the house. There, barely visible through the cracked door, was a figure. Mr. Henderson. His face pale, his hands trembling, his eyes wide with something that looked a lot like fear. They locked eyes for a moment, and Derek didn't see anger or confusion anymore. He saw someone on the edge of something, someone quietly screaming for help in the only way they knew how. Derek took a step forward. "Sir?" he said gently. "Is everything okay?" Mr. Henderson didn't speak. His mouth moved, but no words came. His hands twitched like he wanted to reach out, but couldn't bring himself to do it. That's when Derek made up his mind. He turned and walked quickly to the truck, hands shaking just a bit. He picked up his phone and stood there, his thumb hovering over the screen. Then he made the call. 1. What's your emergency? Derek kept his voice calm, but his chest felt like it was being squeezed. Hi. I'm on Maple Street. I work. Sanitation. There's an elderly man here. I think he might be in trouble. His trash bin is full of broken personal belongings, blood-stained cloth, and he looks unwell. Confused. Afraid. I don't think he's hurt right now, but I don't think he's okay either. The dispatcher asked questions. Derek answered everyone, eyes still locked on the house. The old man hadn't moved. He just stood there, barely there, like a ghost that hadn't yet decided if it wanted to stay. "Thank you," the dispatcher said finally. "Help is on the way. Please stay nearby." Derek hung up and took a slow breath. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt worried. Had he made the right call? What if the old man got scared and locked himself away forever? What if this wasn't what he needed? But deep down, Derek knew he couldn't have done nothing. Because doing nothing would have meant ignoring all the signs, the sadness, the silence, the slow collapse of a man who once had love, memories, purpose, and now only had shadows and broken frames. Minutes passed. The street was still quiet. Then, far off, came the sound of a siren. Low, steady, getting closer. Derek turned back toward the porch, and for the first time he saw something he hadn't expected. Mr. Henderson was still standing there. But now, he looked relieved, not smiling, not happy, just relieved, like someone had finally noticed. Like maybe, just maybe, help had arrived not a second too soon. The sirens grew louder, then quieted as the emergency vehicle turned the corner onto Maple Street. The flashing lights reflected off the windows of the quiet houses, waking up a neighborhood that hadn't paid attention in a long time. Derek stood still near the curb, heart thudding. He didn't know what would happen next. All he knew was that something had shifted, and whatever came of it, he wasn't walking away. The ambulance parked gently in front of Mr. Henderson's house. 2 paramedics stepped out, followed by a woman in plain clothes, her badge clipped to a lanyard. A social worker, probably. She moved with calm steps, her face unreadable but kind. "I'm the one who called," Derek said quietly, approaching them. "He's inside. He hasn't said much, just something's wrong." The woman nodded and thanked him. The team walked toward the porch while Derek stayed back, watching anxiously. Mr. Henderson was still at the doorway, barely inside, like his feet weren't sure if they wanted to stay or go. His eyes met the woman's as she stepped forward. "Mr. Henderson?" she said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just here to talk." The old man's lips parted slightly. Then, in the softest voice, he said, "It was an accident. No one moved too fast. No one raised their voice." One of the paramedics stood beside him while the other gently checked his wrist. The woman didn't push. She just listened. Derek watched from the steps, frozen. Finally, the woman looked over and gave him a small nod, a signal, an invitation. Derek walked forward slowly. As he stepped inside, the air hit him like a wave. The house smelled like dust and old memories. Curtains hung heavy, books were piled in corners. A coat still hung by the door, like someone had left it there years ago and never came back for it. Mr. Henderson sat down slowly in a worn armchair, his hands resting in his lap, pale and trembling. Derek took a seat nearby, his voice soft. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to." But the old man spoke. "She fell," he whispered. "Margaret. It happened so fast. She was sick, but she still smiled. Even when her hands shook. Even when she forgot where she was sometimes." His eyes drifted to a photo frame on the nearby shelf. The only one not broken. "She was trying to get a vase from the cabinet," he went on, staring past the room now, as if seeing it happen all over again. "I told her I'd get it, but she said I was babying her. She reached up. She slipped. I tried to catch her." His voice cracked. "I wasn't fast enough." Silence followed, heavy and deep. "I cleaned up the blood," he continued, his tone flat. "I told the neighbors it was peaceful, that she just Didn't wake up one morning. I didn't want them to know. I didn't want to remember her. That way? The paramedic checked a small cut on his hand. Did you hurt yourself recently? I dropped the vase, he said, glancing at the bandage. A few days ago, the same one, her favorite. I thought maybe if I held it again. His words faded. The social worker leaned forward gently. Mr. Henderson, what you're feeling isn't unusual. After a loss like that, grief doesn't follow rules. You're not broken. You're hurting, and you don't have to do it alone. He looked at her, then at Derek. But what do I do now? I don't know how to be without her. Derek swallowed the lump in his throat. I don't think you have to figure it out all at once, he said. But maybe you just take the first step. Let someone help. The old man closed his eyes. After a moment, he nodded. The paramedics didn't take him away. That was never the plan. They patched his hand and left a few resources. The social worker stayed a little longer, helping set up an appointment. A grief counselor, someone to visit and talk with him regularly. She said someone could also help manage the bills and paperwork. Small things, big things, all the weight he'd been carrying alone. As she stood to leave, she turned to Derek. Would you be willing to check in on him? Just help him get to appointments? Maybe talk now and then? Familiar faces make a big difference. Derek didn't hesitate. Of course. Whatever he needs. Later, as they stood on the porch, Mr. Henderson leaned on the doorframe, watching the ambulance drive off. They're really not taking me away? He asked quietly. No, sir, Derek said. They're just helping you come back. The old man nodded again, his eyes rimmed red but clearer than they'd been in weeks. Thank you for not walking away, he said. Derek looked at him with soft eyes. No one should be left alone to carry that kind of pain. As Derek left the porch, the door stayed open behind him for the first time. The days that followed felt different on Maple Street. Something had changed, not loudly, not all at once, but like a slow thaw after a long winter. The next morning, Derek returned to work as usual, but this time, he wasn't just watching. Mr. Henderson's house out of worry, he was watching for signs of life, signs of healing, and he saw it. The porch light, which had once flickered constantly, was now steady, replaced. The curtains weren't drawn all the way closed anymore. There was a small crack, just enough to let in the sun, and on the porch, rail, right next to the old chipped paint, sat a new potted flower, another marigold. Derek smiled to himself. Later that week, he returned in the afternoon, not in uniform, not with gloves or bins to collect. Just as Derek, just as a neighbor. Mr. Henderson greeted him at the door, still a little slow on his feet, still wearing that old sweater with the frayed sleeves, but standing a bit taller than before. His eyes, though still tired, had something new in them, clarity. They sat on the porch together, quietly at first, watching the neighborhood, a neighborhood that had once ignored them both. I thought people forgot about me, Mr. Henderson said one afternoon, his voice low, thoughtful. Derek looked over. Honestly, I think they just didn't know how to reach you. Maybe I didn't know how to be reached. Derek nodded. Yeah, that too. But you opened the door. That's not nothing. And something beautiful started to happen. One by one, the neighbors who had once crossed the street to avoid eye contact began stopping by. Mrs. Thompson came over with a basket of muffins. The retired man from 3 doors down offered to trim Mr. Henderson's hedges. The little girl, Lily, brought drawings she made in school and asked if he liked flowers, then invited him to plant some with her. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was real. Over the next few weeks, Derek kept visiting, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to help with things around the house, sometimes to sit quietly while Mr. Henderson sorted through old boxes of memories. They'd go through Margaret's photo albums together. Sometimes Mr. Henderson would laugh. Sometimes he wouldn't say anything for a long time. Both were okay. One afternoon, Derek arrived to find something new. The front door had been painted a cheerful red. The porch swing had been cleaned up, the rusted chains replaced, and on the steps sat a small wooden sign, hand-painted by Lily, that read, "Welcome, Mr. Henderson. We're glad you're here." That day, Mr. Henderson met Derek outside, holding a photograph. "I found the other half," he said quietly. It was the torn photo Derek had once found in the trash. Now it had been taped back together. A young couple on their honeymoon, arms around each other, smiling like the world hadn't touched them yet. "Margaret always said I'd outlive her," Mr. Henderson murmured. "I just didn't think I'd have to live without her." Derek didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the photo, then at the man holding it, who, despite everything, was still standing. "You're not without her," Derek finally said. "You're just carrying her with you now, a little differently." Mr. Henderson nodded, slowly. "That's what the counselor said too. Guess you're all getting to me." That evening, as the sun set over Maple Street, neighbors gathered outside for the first time in years. Someone brought cookies. Someone brought tea. Someone lit candles in little jars and placed them on their porches. Derek stood next to Mr. Henderson as Lily handed him a flower crown she made out of clover and dandelions. "You're like the king of the block now," she giggled. Mr. Henderson chuckled, the sound creaky but warm. "Feels more like I finally found my way home." Derek looked around at the once quiet, distant neighborhood, now full of light, laughter, and voices. It didn't happen because of a grand speech or a big rescue. It happened because someone paid attention, because one man lifted a trash can, saw something strange, and chose not to look away. Because kindness, no matter how small, reaches farther than we ever think it can. As the stars came out, Mr. Henderson leaned back in his porch chair, that half-mended photo in his hand, and whispered, into the cool evening air, "Thank you, Margaret, for giving me just enough strength to let someone in." And beside him, Derek smiled. Not because the story had a perfect ending, but because it had a new beginning. One built on trust, on patience, on community, and on the simple truth that no one should be forgotten. Not when just one act of kindness can remind someone that their life still matters.